Hi everyone, it is Ms. White here again to do a video for our first text of Unit 4. I think most of you will probably be studying this as the second text. My kids are doing it as a first text, but is the reading by William Kingdon Clifford, The Ethics of Belief. So we're going to read through this today. There are four key questions in Unit 4. We've got one related to experience, testimony, and expertise. We've got one about our responsibility. We've got one about when we can trust others and what we should do when there's disagreement between people. And the Clifford reading goes through most of, if not all of these questions. So I'm going to talk you through my annotations today and just point out anything that needs explanation as we go along. I hope that it's helpful and enjoy. So we start with the duty of inquiry. And I love this about Clifford is that he starts with a thought experiment. We love a thought experiment. Great way to start. A ship owner was about to send to sea an emigrant ship. He knew that she was old and not over well built at first, that she had seen many seas and climes and had often had needed repairs. Doubts had been suggested to him that possibly she was not seaworthy. These doubts preyed upon his mind and made him unhappy. He thought that perhaps he ought to have her thoroughly overhauled and refitted, even though this should put him to great expense. Before the ship sailed, however, he succeeded in overcoming these melancholy reflections. He said to himself that she had gone safely through so many voyages and weathered so many storms that it was idle to suppose she would not come safely home from this trip also. He would put his trust in Providence, which could hardly fail to protect all these unhappy families that were leaving their fatherland to seek for better times elsewhere. He would dismiss from his mind all ungenerous suspicions about the honesty of builders and contractors. In such ways, he acquired a sincere and comfortable conviction that his vessel was thoroughly safe and seaworthy. He watched her departure with a light heart and benevolent wishes for the success of the exiles in their strange new home that was to be, and he got his insurance money when she went down in mid-ocean and told no tales. What a great opening. And I think it's very funny to think about that also Clifford he survived a shipwreck in his final few years. So I wonder if he was drawing on this at all, his survival of a shipwreck. But what we're seeing is he's opening us up to like how do we come to good beliefs and do we need to make good beliefs? And he's saying when they impact others, we really do need to have good beliefs because our actions hurt other people. And when we look at this, did the sea did the ship owner, did he come to a good belief? And I think none of us would say that he did. And Clifford's about to tell us why he didn't come to a good belief. What shall we say of him? Surely this, that he was verily guilty of the death of those men. It is admitted that he did sincerely believe in the soundness of his ship, but the sincerity of his conviction can in no wise help him, because he had no right to believe on such evidence as was before him. He had acquired his belief not by honestly earning it in patient investigation, but by stifling his doubts. And although in the end he may have felt so sure about it that he could not think otherwise, yet inasmuch as he had knowingly and willingly worked himself into that frame of mind, he must be held responsible for it. So we're seeing here that Clifford is saying, well, this was based on poor reasoning. He just got rid of his doubts. He like sort of just stifled his doubts to come to the belief that his ship was seaworthy. And just stifling doubts isn't enough evidence to make a good belief. We can't just base our beliefs on something else. Like we can't just base our beliefs on like stifling our doubts or little to no evidence. Because that's wrong. Because I mean, obviously these people died, these hypothetical people. So he's saying that he must be held responsible for the decision. And this bit, so we've got here, stifling doubts is a bad way to make a belief. And I've also tabbed this as the responsibility question. That's the majority of this section, but there's the majority of this reading, but a lot of them are actually, all of the questions are in here. So Clifford then says something that I think is quite interesting. He says, "Let us alter the case a little, and suppose that the ship was not unsound after all, that she made her voyage safely, and many others after it. Will that diminish the guilt of her owner? Not one jot. When an action is once done, it is right or wrong forever. No accidental failure of its good or evil fruits can possibly alter that. The man would not have been innocent. He would only have been being not found out. The question of right or wrong has to do with the origin of his belief, not the matter of it, not what it was, but how he got it, not whether it turned out to be true or false, but whether he had a right to believe such on evidence as was before him." So he's saying here that it doesn't matter whether the ship sunk or not. It was a bad belief because it was formed on bad evidence, and it's bad regardless. It's a bad belief regardless of whether or not the ship actually sinks. And so, like, an easier way to think of this is like, well, if I murder someone and no one knows that I murdered someone, is it still bad? Yes. Same with beliefs. If I form a bad belief and I accidentally luck into it being true, it's still a bad belief. I didn't base it on any evidence. And Clifford is saying we need to hold people responsible for their bad beliefs. And the guilt doesn't go away if your bad belief turns out to be true. It's still wrong to murder someone if no one ever finds out about it. It's still wrong to do like make decisions and take actions based on bad beliefs, even if your belief actually turns out to be true. Um, Another example I think that could illustrate this, because ship owners pretty old fashioned, but think about if I decide that I'm not going to teach Clifford to my year 12 class because I've decided that I don't think that Clifford is going to be on the exam because I was told in a dream by Shakespeare. And if I have this belief that Shakespeare told me in a dream that Clifford is not going to be on the exam, and I genuinely have conviction that Clifford isn't going to be on the exam, so I decide not to teach it, it's still wrong for me to not teach it, even if it turns out Clifford isn't on the exam. It's still a bad thing for me to do. And this is why beliefs are so important, because I guess they guide our actions. And we can't just always have bad beliefs, because even if those beliefs are true, it's still wrong. And that's what he's getting at. Let's go on to the next section. And this is another thought experiment he gives, which I think is quite interesting. There was once an island in which some of the inhabitants professed a religion teaching neither the doctrine of original sin nor that of eternal punishment. Oh my goodness, guys, this was absolutely terrifying in 1877. How dare, in England as well, how dare they not teach a religion about original sin or eternal punishment? So there is some sort of rumor that, or a suspicion, it's about to say, a suspicion got abroad that one of the professors of this religion, this non-Christian religion, had made use of unfair means to get their doctrines taught to children. They were accused of wresting the laws of their country in such a way as to remove children from the care of their natural and legal guardians, and even of stealing them away and keeping them concealed from their friends and relations. A number of men formed themselves into society for the purpose of agitating the public about this matter. They published grave accusations against individual citizens of the highest position and character, and did all in their power to injure these citizens in their exercise of their professions. So great was the noise they made that a commission was appointed to investigate the facts, but after the commission had carefully inquired into all the evidence that could be got, it appeared that the accused were innocent. So we have these agitators who are arguing against these religious teachings, saying that they're trying to steal children away and teach them this bad religion. And they all got really worked up and sort of put the religion down. And then a commission was appointed, and the commission found that these religious people weren't actually doing that thing, right? They weren't actually putting these religious ideas into the minds of children. Not only had they been accused on insufficient evidence, the agitators they didn't have sufficient evidence, but the evidence of their innocence was such as the agitators might easily have obtained if they had attempted fair inquiry. So they could have easily gone and found out, actually, no, they're not stealing children and teaching them this old religion or this bad religion. After these disclosures, the inhabitants of that country looked upon the members of the agitating society not as persons whose judgment was to be distrusted, but also as no longer to be counted as honourable men. For although they had sincerely and conscientiously believed in the charges they had made, yet they had no right to believe on such evidence as was before them. Their sincere convictions, instead of being honestly earned by patient inquiring, were stolen by listening to the voice of prejudice and passion. So Clifford's saying sincerity of a belief is not enough. You can so sincerely believe something. You have to have evidence, though. If you're going to believe it, you need to have evidence, because even if you sincerely believe it, it's not right unless you have the evidence, because you'll end up in situations like this, and perhaps it's not true. But I like this bit too. I like Clifford's variations on his cases. Let us vary this case also, and suppose other things remaining as before, that a still more accurate investigation proved that the accused to have been really guilty. So imagine that, okay, they've been found that the agitators, the people who were claiming that they were stealing these children away, they didn't have sufficient evidence to say that they were actually stealing the children away and teaching them this religion. But then they went into a further investigation and found, actually, no, they are stealing children and teaching the religion. But the problem is that the agitators didn't have enough evidence for it. They still had a bad belief. And this reminds me kind of Gettier problems, if you did those in year 11, where it's like, where you've got the farmer, right? He's like brought in all of his sheep, and he goes to his window and he looks out the window, and oh my goodness, he sees this white fluffy thing. And in his head, he's like, oh no, I've left a sheep outside. I've forgotten to bring one in for the night. So while he's standing there at the window and he's looking at this fluffy animal, it's actually a fluffy dog. He doesn't have knowledge that he has actually left a sheep outside. The sheep is just, it's a fluffy dog that looks like a sheep, but he's thought that he's made this good belief. But unbeknownst to him, there actually is a sheep behind the dog. It's just not the one he's looking at. Anyway, slight tangent on Gettier problems. But like, if it turns out that if like he still doesn't have the strong, I guess, the knowledge that that actually is a sheep, that he has left a sheep outside. Similarly, these people have come to the conclusion that this religious group is mistreating children, and teaching them this religion unlawfully. They've come to this belief, but not on good grounds. And even if it turns out then that they are actually stealing children and teaching them this religion, it's still a bad belief. Because Clifford says, would this make any difference in the guilt of the accusers? Clearly not. The question is not whether their belief was true or false, but whether they entertained it on wrong grounds. They would no doubt say, now you see that we were right after all. Next time, perhaps you will believe us. And they might be believed, but they would not thereby become honourable men. They would not be innocent. They would only be not found out. Every one of them, if he chose to examine himself in foro conscientiae, which in Latin means before the tribunal of conscience, would know that he had acquired and nourished a belief when he had no right to believe on such evidence as was before him, and therein he would know that he had done a wrong thing. And I know where you're all thinking now. You're all being like, but the belief, it wasn't the belief that was bad. It was the action that they took because of the belief. And Clifford's already thought of that. He's going to tell you what's wrong with that in this next section. So here's why he says it may be said, however, that in both of these supposed cases, it is not the belief which is judged to be wrong, but the action following upon it. So he's like, okay, we might look at this and think it's actually not the belief that's wrong. It's the action. It's what you do with the belief, and that you can have any belief that you truly ever want. As long as you don't act on it, because it's the actions that hurt people, not the beliefs themselves. And no surprise here, but Clifford is about to rebut this. So he says, the ship owner might say, I'm perfectly certain that my ship is sound, but I still feel it my duty to have her examined before trusting the lives of so many people to her. And it might be said to the agitator, however convinced you were of the justice of your cause and the truth of your convictions, you ought not to have made a public attack upon any man's character until you had examined the evidence on both sides with the utmost patience and care. So it's the action, what they did with the belief is what's wrong. But Clifford's going to say, okay, well, actually, no, the belief is still wrong. In the first place, let us morally wrong, not as in right, correct, or incorrect, morally right and morally wrong. So he's saying that the belief is still wrong, regardless of the action. It's not just the action, it's the belief as well. In the first place, let us admit that, so far as it goes, this view of the case is right and necessary. Right, because even when a man's belief is so fixed that he cannot think otherwise, he still has a choice in regard to the action suggested by it, and so cannot escape the duty of investigating on the ground of the strength of his convictions, and necessary because those who are not yet capable of controlling their feelings and thoughts must have a plain rule with dealing with overt acts. But this being premised as necessary, it becomes clear that it is not sufficient and that our previous judgment is required to supplement it, for it is not possible so to sever the belief from the action it suggests as to condemn the one without condemning the other. And this, I think, is such an interesting thing. He's saying it's not possible to sever the belief from the action. And no matter how hard you try, when you have a belief, it's going to impact how you treat other people, and it's going to possibly impact other people. And it's still bad to have that belief or make an unfair judgment without sufficient evidence. And it's, I guess, the balance of fairness and unfairness is out of whack if you bring this belief in. So he's saying no man holding a strong belief on one side of a question, or even wishing to hold a belief on one side, can investigate it with such fairness and completeness as if he were really in doubt and unbiased, so that the existence of a belief not founded on fair inquiry unfits a man for the performance of this necessary duty. So if you are going to believe something, you need to go to the effort to actually investigate it. If you can't just have this untrue belief and just accept it, if you're actually going to believe it, you need to believe it because if you've got strong enough conviction to believe it, you need to investigate it. It's not right to just believe without any investigation. Whenever you have a belief come into your head, you've got to investigate it fully before you make it something that you believe. And if you haven't investigated it yet, you can't believe it yet, because you've done something wrong not investigating it. So you should not hold a belief unless you've investigated it first, unless you've got that evidence. Nor is it truly a belief at all which has not some influence upon the actions of him who holds it. And this is this is something I think is so, so true. And I'm going to give you an example once I get to the end of this paragraph. He who truly believes that which prompts him to an action has looked upon the action to lust after it. He has committed it already in his heart. If a belief is not realized immediately in open deeds, it is stored up for guidance of the future. It goes to make a part of that aggregate of beliefs, which is the link between sensation and action at every moment of all our lives, and which is so organized and compacted together that no part of it can be isolated from the rest. But every new addition modifies the structure of the whole. No real belief, however trifling and fragmentary it might seem, is ever truly insignificant. It prepares us to receive more of its like, confirms those which resembled it before, and weakens others, and so gradually it lays a stealthy train in our inmost thoughts, which may someday explode into overt action and leave its stamp upon our character forever. Okay, what he's saying here is that no beliefs are ever insignificant. Beliefs are never insignificant. Every single belief that you have, sort of, once you put that into your head, it is stored up for the guidance of the future. Well, okay, I've accepted this one. I can then accept this one, and I can build on this belief with this belief. And no matter how small that belief is, you're going to continue to um, add to that. And whether you like it or not, you will have some sort of attitude towards a belief. If I go to work every day and in my head I genuinely believe that my boss is evil, I'm going to act a certain way towards my boss, whether or not I try and hide it or not. It's not something that you can hide with your beliefs. I'm also thinking about times like where they talk about in education, there's the explicit curriculum and the implicit curriculum, and how um, teachers will often accidentally teach parts of their beliefs or values without meaning to. And an example I can think of, and one that I gave my class, is that when I was teaching the framework of ideas for Year 12 English, and we were looking at protest, and I'm very interested in the suffragette movement. And so when we read Emmeline Pankhurst, I was very excited. I talked about it a lot. I never said, this is my favorite piece. This is something I'm really interested in. I taught it in a certain way. And then about half my class, even after I'd taught all the other mentor texts, end up writing on the suffragette unit, the suffragette text. And it's like, have I accidentally or implicitly brought my own beliefs, my own interests into the classroom, even though I haven't meant to? And like, this is like why beliefs aren't insignificant, because even if you're like, oh, I truly am going to keep this belief hidden. I'm going to keep hidden that I truly believe that 2 + 2 = 5. I don't want anyone to know that I believe that 2 + 2 = 5. And I'm going to pretend that I don't believe that. You are still going to act in certain ways. There's no way to fully sever the link between that belief you have and the actions you take. And another thing I think is important is like, is it fair to have that belief, even if you're hiding it? Is it fair that I believe my boss is evil, even if my boss never even suspects that I think that she's evil, if she never even has any inkling that I think she's evil? It's still wrong of me to believe that without sufficient evidence. I have no sufficient evidence for my boss being evil, by the way. But if I've just believed she's evil because it came to me in a dream or a cloud told me, which is insufficient evidence, it's not, I guess, fair. It's wrong. It's wrong to do. It's wrong to make that judgment. Um, which is why beliefs are never insignificant, because they do turn into other beliefs, and those beliefs then guide how we act. And even if it's not a belief that is built upon, that makes a really significant, I guess, change, it makes it okay for you to accept another belief without sufficient evidence. And if you keep doing that, you're on a very, very slippery slope. If it becomes okay for you to accept or believe something without sufficient evidence, you can believe anything. And that is wrong. Okay, enough yapping. Let's keep on reading. And no one man's belief is in any case a private matter, which is what I've just been yapping about, which concerns himself alone. Our lives are guided by that general conception of the course of things which has been created by society for social purposes. Our words, our phrases, our forms, and our processes and modes of thought are common property, fashioned and perfected from age to age, an heirloom in which every succeeding generation inherits a precious deposit and a sacred trust to be handled on to the next one, not unchanged, but enlarged and purified with some clear marks of its proper handiwork. Into this, for good or ill, is woven every belief of every man who has speech of his fellows, an awful privilege and an awful responsibility that we should that we should help to create the world in which posterity will live. So he's looking at, okay, your beliefs aren't private. And like what I was saying about, well, I can just keep it hidden that I believe that 2 + 2 = 5. I can keep it hidden that I like the suffragette movement. No one ever has to know that. But um, it's not just, I guess, you that has those beliefs. It's woven into our social interactions, to our words, our phrases. These are all, I guess, like public, all of these things that you do, because all of your beliefs become public because it changes how you interact all the time. Like if I think my boss is evil, even if it's because a cloud told me, if I genuinely believe that she's evil, it's going to change the words, phrases, the attitudes I use, and that's going to impact other people, whether I want it to or not. And then we've even got here that this is woven into every man, and it passes it along to future generations, that if it becomes okay to me to start believing things without sufficient evidence or sufficient reason, then it's going to become okay for my children to do that as well. And we don't want that to be mankind. We don't want it to be okay for everyone to believe believe things without sufficient evidence. In the two supposed cases which have been considered, it has been judged wrong to believe on insufficient evidence, or to nourish belief by suppressing doubts and avoiding investigation. The reason of this judgment is not far to seek. It is that in both these cases, the belief held by one man was of great importance to other men. But for as much as no belief held by one man, however seemingly trivial the belief, and however obscure the believer, is ever actually insignificant or without its effect on the fate of mankind. We have no choice but to extend our judgment to all cases of belief, whatever. So none of the beliefs, even though those two examples he gave earlier were big beliefs, there's no belief, no matter how trivial, how small. If I believe that John has a coin in his pocket, it's not insignificant. Even though it doesn't hurt anyone, it's what's the foundation for the rest of my beliefs that I keep coming up with. And that's bad. We don't want bad beliefs because it is bad. Belief, that sacred faculty which prompts the decisions of our will and knits into harmonious working all the compacted energies of our being, is ours, not for ourselves, but for humanity. It is rightly used on truths which have been established by long experience and waiting toil, and which have stood in the fierce light of free and fearless questioning. Then it helps to bind men together and strengthen and direct their common action. It is desecrated when given to unproved and unquestioned statements for the solace and private pleasure of the believer, to add tinsel splendor to the plain straight road of our life and display a bright mirage beyond it, or even to drown the common sorrows of our kind by self-deception, which allows them not only to cast down but also degrade us. Whoso would deserve well of his fellows in this matter will guard the purity of his beliefs with a very fanaticism of jealous care, lest at any time it should rest on an unworthy object and catch a stain which can never be wiped away. So we've got Clifford's really strong, this leaves a stain and we can't wipe it away. If you have a bad belief, it'll tar your character to be bad. So I've put this responsibility and obligations that we do have an obligation to believe well, because of all of these problems he's just unpacked. Now, this, I'm about to start where my class finished reading in class. So, hi guys, this is where we're reading from now, and I'm going to continue where we've just finished. It is not only the leader of men, statesman, philosopher, or poet that owes this bounden duty to mankind. We all have a duty to believe well, he's saying. Every rustic who delivers in the village alehouse his slow, infrequent sentences may help to kill or keep alive the fatal superstitions which clog his race. Even the slow-minded village alehouse worker can change the race, can change humanity. We all influence others. Every hard-worked wife of an artisan may transmit to her children beliefs which shall knit society together or rend it in pieces. So, I mean, this is his views, not mine. But even the housewives are teaching their children. 1877, guys. Even the housewives are teaching children these things, their beliefs, so they're passing them on, and there's no way to keep them hidden, even if they're implicitly or explicitly teaching their children these beliefs. No simplicity of mind, no obscurity of station can escape the universal duty of questioning all that we believe. We have a universal duty to believe well. It is true that this duty is a hard one, and the doubt which comes out of it is often a very bitter thing. It leaves us bare and powerless where we thought we were safe and strong. To know all about it, all about anything, is to know how to deal with it under all circumstances. We feel much happier and more secure when we think we know precisely what to do, no matter what happens, than when we have lost our way and do not know where to turn. And if we have supposed ourselves to know all about anything and to be capable of doing what is fit in regard to it, we naturally do not like to find that we are really ignorant and powerless, that we have to begin again at the beginning and try to learn what the thing is and how it is to be dealt with. If indeed anything can be learned about it, is a sense of power attached to a sense of knowledge that makes men desirous of believing and afraid of doubting. This sense of power, this power of the believing, this sense of power is the highest and best pleasures when the belief on which it is founded is a true belief and has been fairly earned by investigation. We need to investigate our beliefs. We can't just believe them. For then we may justly feel that it is a common property and holds good for others as well as for ourselves. Then we may be glad, not that I have learned secrets by which I am safer and stronger, but that we men have got mastery over the world, over more of the world, sorry. So there's power comes from good beliefs. We become a collective. The fact that I believe well makes the human race better. We're stronger. We have mastery, more mastery over the world because I have more mastery over the world. We come together and we shall be strong, not for ourselves, but in the name of man and his strength. But if the belief has been accepted on insufficient evidence, the pleasure is a stolen one. Not only does it deceive ourselves by giving us a sense of power which we do not really possess, but it is sinful because it is stolen in defiance of our duty to mankind. That duty is to guard ourselves from such beliefs as from pestilence, which may shortly master our own body and then spread to the rest of the town. What would be thought of one who, for the sake of a sweet fruit, should deliberately run the risk of bringing a plague upon his family and his neighbors? And as in other such cases, it is not the risk only which has been considered, for a bad action is always bad at the time when it is done, no matter what happens afterwards. And here's what I was talking about before. It's bad, even though a bad thing is always bad, no matter who knows about it. Every time we let ourselves believe for unworthy reasons, we weaken our powers of self-control, of doubting, of judicially and fairly weighing evidence. We all suffer severely enough from the maintenance and support of false beliefs and the fatally wrong actions which they will lead to, and the evil born when one such belief is entertained is great and wide, but a greater and wider evil arises when the credulous character is maintained and supported, when a habit of believing for unworthy reasons is fostered and made permanent. If you don't know what credulous means, it means having or showing too great a readiness to believe things, which is why English brain on here, but an incredulous tone is when you're like disbelieving. Um, if I steal money from any person, there may be no harm done for the mere transfer of possession. He may not feel the loss, or it may not prevent him from using the money badly, but I cannot help doing this great wrong towards man that I make myself dishonest. So I guess another example you could look at here. So he's using the example of stealing, and even if if he steals and it doesn't hurt anyone, it's still bad because it's wrong towards man to be dishonest. It's wrong towards mankind, to humankind. So another example is like if so say if I decide I'm going to keep going with the boss, but say I decide to murder my boss, and let's say that no one ever knows and no one ever misses her. Perhaps she's on like she's retired. Um if I murder her and then it's never, no one ever finds out, it's still a bad thing. Doesn't matter whether anyone knows about it or not, it's still bad. Same with believing. It's bad to believe, um, even if it's like, let my brain catch up here, guys. Sorry. Um, my excitement just ran away. So it's still bad. You're doing wrong towards man if you are being dishonest. You're still hurting people even if no one ever knows about it. If no one knows that you're believing badly, it's still a bad thing. What hurts society is not that it should lose its property, but that it should become a den of thieves, for then it must cease to be a society. When we start believing badly, we cease to be a society. This is why we ought not to do evil, that good may come. For at any rate, this great evil has come, that we have done evil and we are made wicked thereby. In like in like manner, if I let myself believe anything on insufficient evidence, there may be no great harm done by the mere belief, but it may be true after all, or I may never have occasion to exhibit it in outward acts, but I cannot help doing this great wrong towards man that I make myself credulous. The danger to society is not merely that it should believe wrong things, though that is great enough, but that it should become credulous and lose the habit of testing things and inquiring in them, for then it must sink back into savagery. We will become savages if we believe badly, if we become credulous, if we are too likely to believe things. So if we believe one thing without investigating it, we're more likely to believe another thing and another thing and another thing and another thing and another thing until we become credulous and we're going to believe anything that we're told. And that is when we stop being a society. The harm which is done by credulity in man is not confined to the fostering of a credulous character in others and consequent support of false beliefs. Habitual want of care about what I believe leads to habitual want of care in others about the truth of what is told to me. Men speak the truth to one another when one reveres the truth in his own mind and in the other's mind. But how shall my friend revere the truth in my mind when I myself am careless about it? When I believe a thing because I want to believe them and because they are comforting and pleasant, will he not learn to cry peace to me when there is no peace? But such course I shall surround myself with a thick atmosphere of falsehood and fraud, and in that I must live. You don't want to live in this like falsehood and fraud. It may matter little to me in my cloud castle of sweet illusions and darling lies, but it matters much to man that I have made my neighbors ready to deceive. The credulous man is father to the liar and the cheat. He lives in the bosom of this his family, and it is no marvel if he should become even as they are. So closely are our duties knit together that whoso shall keep the whole law and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all. So we've got um bad belief does wrong by man because we are so close to others and we influence them. There's the harm of credulity, which is fostering credulity in others, the consequent support of false beliefs, and stops care for the truth in others. And here he says, to sum up, it is wrong always, everywhere, and for anyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence. And this definitely links to both of our first two questions for Unit 4, the experience, testimony, and expertise, and the responsibility question. And this is one of probably his most famous quotes. I think it's in the textbook as well, when you start reading about Clifford, that, yes, it is wrong. It is wrong always, everywhere, and for anyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence. If a man holding a belief which he was taught in childhood or persuaded of afterwards keeps down and pushes away any doubts which arise about it in his mind, purposely avoids the reading of books and the company of men that call into question or discuss it, and regards as impious those questions which cannot easily be asked without disturbing it, the life of that man is one long sin against mankind. If this judgment seems harsh when applied to those simple souls who have never known better, who have never been brought up from the cradle with a horror of doubt and taught that their eternal welfare depends on what they believe, then it leads to the very serious question, who hath made Israel to sin? It may be permitted for me to fortify this judgment with the sentence of Milton. A man may be a heretic in the truth, and if he believe things only because his pastor says so, or the assembly so determine, without knowing other reason, though his belief be true, yet the very truth he holds becomes hearsay, or sorry, heresy, I should say. So if it's got, I guess, relating back to Christianity, remember we're in 1877 in England, that if a man just believes things because his pastor says them, it's not good. That's not a good belief, and it becomes heresy. And with the famous aphorism of Coleridge, he who begins by loving Christianity better than truth will proceed by loving his own sect or church better than Christianity and end loving himself better than all. Remember, for Christianity, we don't want to love ourselves more than everything else. We want to love we want to love the truth. We don't want to become selfish. That's the worst thing. So if you love Christianity, so the religion, better than the truth, you'll end up loving the church more than you love Christianity and end up loving yourself. It's a slippery slope. Don't fall down it. 1877 England, remember. Inquiry into the evidence of a doctrine is not to be made once for all and then taken as finally settled. It is never lawful to stifle a doubt, for either it can be honestly answered by means of the inquiry already made, or else it proves that the inquiry was not complete. But, says one, I am a very busy man, and I have no time for the long course of study which would be necessary to make me in any degree a competent judge of certain questions, or even be able to understand the nature of the arguments. Then he should have no time to believe. Woo! I like that. So he's like, if you don't have time to study or search for the truth, you don't have time to believe things. You're going to have to be like, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. I don't believe that. You can't just believe things if you don't have the time to investigate them. And that brings us to the end of that first section. And quite an interesting section. Let's go to the second section, the weight of authority. Are we then to become universal skeptics, doubting everything, afraid always to put one foot before the other until we have personally tested the firmness of the road? And this is where we're getting more into the experience testimony expertise part, as well as trust, the trust question. Are we to deprive ourselves of the help and guidance of that vast body of knowledge which is daily growing upon the world, because neither we nor any other one person can possibly test 100th part of it by immediate experiment or observation, and because it would not be completely proved if we did? Shall we steal and tell lies because we have had no personal experience wide enough to justify the belief that it is wrong to do so? So he's going to look at this sort of objection. He's like, okay, I've just convinced you that you don't have time to believe unless you have time to investigate it. But he's like, you're going to say, well, you can't investigate everything absolutely. Like, you don't have time to nitpick absolutely everything to make sure that you believe. So, should we just become skeptics and just not believe anything? And then any time that we're asked anything, like, does 2 + 2 = 4? We'll be like, not sure about that one. I haven't investigated it fully, because I can't even be sure that the world exists. So he's like, should we become skeptics, doubt everything? And this isn't what he's saying. He's going to tell you why. And also another one, that should we be able to tell lies and steal, because we've actually never come to our own conclusion besides being told that it's wrong to steal and lie. So, and if I haven't actually investigated it, does it make it okay? He's going to look into this. There is no practical danger that such consequences will ever follow from scrupulous care and self-control in the matter of belief. Those men who have most nearly done their duty in this respect have found that certain great principles, and these most fitted for guidance of life, have stood out more and more clearly in proportion to the care and honesty with which they were tested, and have acquired in this way a practical certainty. The beliefs about right and wrong which guide our actions in dealing with men in society, and the beliefs about physical nature which guide our actions in dealing with animate and inanimate bodies, these never suffer from investigation. They can take care of themselves without being propped up by acts of faith, the clamour of paid advocates, or the suppression of contrary evidence. Moreover, there are more cases in which it is our duty to act upon probabilities, although the evidence is not such as to justify present belief, because it is precisely by such action, by observation of its fruits, that evidence is got which may justify future belief. So that we have no reason to fear lest a habit of conscientious inquiry should paralyze the actions of our daily life. Okay, next section. So we've got a nice little summary up there, and we've got a tidy section here, and then the next section. What shall we say of that authority? So we've got, I guess, the expertise. What shall we say of that authority more venerable and august than any individual witness and the time-honored tradition of the human race? An atmosphere of beliefs and conceptions has been formed by the labours and struggles of our forefathers, which enables us to breathe amid the various and complex circumstances of our life. It is around and about us, and within us we cannot think except in forms and processes of thought which it supplies. Is it possible to doubt and test it? And if possible, is it right? We shall find reason to answer that it is not only possible and right, but our bounden duty, that the main purpose of the tradition itself is to supply us with the means of asking questions. So, should we question authority and tradition? Yeah, we should. Of testing and inquiring into things, that if we misuse it and take it as a collection of cut and dried statements to be accepted without further inquiry, we are not only injuring ourselves here, but by refusing to do our part towards the building up of the fabric which shall be inherited by our children, we are tending to cut off ourselves and our race from the human line. In regard, then, to the sacred tradition of humanity, we learn that it consists not in propositions or statements which are to be accepted and believed on the authority of the tradition, but in questions rightly asked, in conceptions which enable us to ask further questions, and in methods of answering questions. The value of all these things depends on their being tested day by day. So the sacredness of tradition depends on us questioning. The very sacredness of the precious deposit imposes upon us the duty of the responsibility of testing it, of purifying and enlarging it to the utmost of our power. He who makes use of its results to stifle his own doubts or to hamper the inquiry of others is guilty of sacrilege which centuries shall never be able to blot out. When the labours and questionings of honest and brave men shall have built up the fabric of known truth to a glory which we in this generation can neither hope for nor imagine, in that pure and holy temple he shall have no part nor lot, but his name and his works shall be cast out into the darkness of oblivion forever. So, big. So let's go now to section 3, the limits of inference. The question in what cases we may believe that which goes beyond our experience. So it's like, when can we believe things that go beyond our own experience? Is a very large and delicate one, extending to the whole range of scientific method and requiring a considerable increase in the application of it before it can be answered with anything approaching to completeness. But one rule, lying on the threshold of the subject of extreme simplicity and vast practical importance, may be here touched upon and shortly laid down. So, what can we believe that goes beyond our experience? A little reflection will show us that every belief, even the simplest and most fundamental, goes beyond experience when regarded as a guide to our actions. So, every belief we have does go beyond our own personal experience. We can't nitpick absolutely every single one of our beliefs and be like, well, I know that because I experienced it firsthand. A burnt child dreads the fire because it believes that the fire will burn it today, just as it did yesterday. But this belief goes beyond experience and assumes that the unknown fire of today is like the known fire of yesterday. Nice analogy there. Even the belief that the child was burnt yesterday goes beyond present experience, which contains only the memory of a burning, not the burning itself. It assumes, therefore, that this memory is trustworthy, although we know that a memory may often be mistaken. So, can we rely on memories to form our beliefs? But if it is to be used as a guide to action, as a hint of what the future is to be, it must assume something about the future, namely that it will be consistent with the supposition that the burning really took place yesterday, which is going beyond experience. Even the fundamental I am, so remember, Descartes, I think, therefore I am, I exist, which cannot be doubted, is no guide to action until it takes it to itself, I shall be, which goes beyond experience. The question is not, may we believe what goes beyond experience, for it is involved in the very nature of belief, but how far and in what manner may we add to our experience in forming beliefs? So he's saying, but actually, can we believe beyond our experience? Because all beliefs go beyond our experience, like the burnt child. Like, even though I've come to the fundamental or the deductive reasoning that I think, therefore I exist, but then that almost moves to I shall be. And just because I exist now doesn't mean I'm going to exist in the next moment. So it's, I guess, all of our beliefs go beyond our experience. We don't know that me existing means I'm going to exist in the next moment. My experience is, it's beyond my experience because I don't know moment to moment what's going to happen. And an answer of utter simplicity and universality is suggested by the example we have taken. A burnt child dreads the fire. We may go beyond experience by assuming that what we do not know is like what we do know, or in other words, we may add to our experience on the assumption of a uniformity in nature. And this is something that the scientists tend to love. Like, things normally act the same. Laws follow, rules follow. The laws of physics tend to follow. There is going to be a next moment because that is what the world or the universe has done for all of the other moments to always remain the same. The ball is going to fall when I drop it because every other time anyone has dropped a ball, it has fallen. A ball's probably a bad example because it can bounce back up, or you can throw a ball. But like, gravity has always shown that the thing falls. And Clifford's saying here that every single belief we have goes beyond our experience. So we have to have the assumption of a uniformity in nature. We have to assume that the world is going to follow patterns because there are just patterns everywhere. What this uniformity precisely is, how we grow in knowledge of it from generation to generation, these are questions for which the present we lay aside, being content to examine two instances which may serve to make the plainer of the nature of the rule. From certain observations made with the spectroscope, we infer the existence of hydrogen in the sun. So when we use this special scientific equipment, sorry, I'm a philosophy teacher, not a science teacher, we infer that there is hydrogen in the sun. By looking into the spectroscope when the sun is shining on its slit, we see a certain definite bright lines, and experiments made upon the bodies on Earth have taught us that when these bright lines are seen, hydrogen is the source of them. We assume then that this unknown light, bright light in the sun, are known like the known bright lines of the laboratory, and that hydrogen in the sun behaves as hydrogen under similar circumstances would behave on Earth. So we assume this sort of laws of physics that it is hydrogen because that's what we've seen before. There's a pattern in the universe, there's a uniformity. But are we not trusting our spectroscope too much, our special scientific equipment? Surely having found it to be trustworthy for terrestrial substances, where its statements can be verified by man, we are justified in accepting its testimony in other like cases. And I've just circled or underlined testimony here, but not when it gives us information about things in the sun, where its testimony cannot be directly verified by man. It's like, well, we're assuming that the hydrogen acts the same on the sun as it does on Earth, and maybe it's not the same, and we can't directly verify that. Certainly, we want to know a little more before this inference can be justified. Unfortunately, we do know this. The spectroscope testifies to exactly the same thing in the two cases, namely that light vibrations of a certain rate are being sent through it. Its construction is such that if it were wrong about this in one case, it would be wrong in the other. When we come to look into the matter, we find that we really have assumed the matter of the sun to be like the matter of the earth, made up of a certain number of distinct substances, and that each of these, when very hot, has a distinct rate of vibration by which it may be recognized and singled out from the rest. But this is the kind of assumption which we are justified in using when we add to our experience. It is an assumption of uniformity in nature and can only be checked by comparison with many similar assumptions which we have to make in other such cases. So he's saying that we don't have much to go on, guys. This is just like how the Earth is. We have to assume that there's patterns because that's what it's always done. There are thousands and millions and hundreds of millions of examples of this happening. So we've just got to kind of assume that there is a uniformity in nature, that the laws of physics will continue to act as they do. Maybe for some people that isn't enough, but Clifford says we kind of got to do this. But is this a true belief of the existence of hydrogen in the sun? Can it help in the right guidance of human action? Certainly not. If it is accepted on unworthy grounds and without some understanding of the process by which it is got at. But when this process is taken in as the ground of belief, it becomes a serious and practical matter. So he's like, it's not a good belief if you just came up with it without actually investigating. But the fact that you've investigated, the fact that you know that this has happened hundreds of times, it can become a very serious and practical matter. For if there is no hydrogen in the sun, the spectroscope, that is to say, the measure of rates of vibration, the measurement of rates of vibration must be an uncertain guide in recognizing different substances, and consequently, it ought not to be used in chemical analysis. In assaying, for example, to the great saving of time, trouble, and money, whereas the acceptance of the spectroscopic method as trustworthy has enriched us not only with new metals, which is a great thing, but with new processes of investigation, which is vastly greater. For another example, let us consider the way in which we infer the truth of a historical event. Say the siege of Syracuse. Sorry, guys, the pronunciation. I am not historian either. Sorry. In the Peloponnesian War. Someone whose history will be able to tell me how to pronounce that properly. Oops, didn't mean to draw that. Our experience is that. So we're looking at a historical event. Our experience is that manuscripts exist which are said to be and which call themselves manuscripts of the history of Thucydides. Sorry, guys. That in other manuscripts stated to be by later historians, he is described as living during the time of the war, and that books supposed to date from the revival of learning tell us how these manuscripts have been preserved and were then acquired. We find also that men do not, as a rule, forge books and histories without a special motive. We assume that in this respect, men in the past were like men in the present, and we can observe that in this case, no special motive was present. That is, we add to our experience on the assumption of a uniformity in the characters of men. So we can believe these historical manuscripts because we can believe that there is some sort of uniformity in how men have recorded and made manuscripts throughout history. sorry, we find, as a rule, forged books and histories without a special motive. We assume that in this respect, men in the past were like men in the present. We observe that in this case, no special motive was present. That is, we add to our experience in the assumption of a uniformity of the characters of men, because our knowledge of this uniformity is far less complete and exact than our knowledge of that which obtains in physics. Inferences and the historical kind are more precarious and less exact than inferences in many other sciences. So yeah, it's not as accurate as science as the uniformity of science, but it's still a uniformity that we can trust. And I guess this comes to the trust question. Um, we can kind of trust it. But if there is any special reason to suspect the character of the persons who wrote or transmitted certain books, the case becomes altered. And I guess here we have expertise as well coming in. Can we trust experts? If a group of documents give internal evidence that they were produced among people who forged books in the names of others, and who, in describing events, suppressed those things which did not suit them, while they amplified such that did suit them, who not only committed these crimes, but glorified them as proofs of humility and zeal, then we must say upon such documents no true historical inference can be founded, but only unsatisfactory conjecture. We may then add to our experience on the assumption of a uniformity in nature. We may fill in our picture of what has been as experience gives it us in such a way as to make the whole consistent with this uniformity, and practically demonstrative inference, that which gives us a right to believe in the result of it, is a clear showing that in no other way than by the truth of this result can the uniformity of nature be saved. No evidence, therefore, can justify us in believing the truth of a statement which is contrary to or outside of the uniformity of nature. If our And this is an important bit I've highlighted here. No evidence, therefore, can justify us in believing the truth of a statement which is contrary to or outside of the uniformity of nature. If our experience is such that it cannot be filled up consistently with uniformity, all we have a right to conclude is that there is something wrong somewhere, but the possibility of inference is taken away. We must rest in our experience and not go beyond it at all. We can't go beyond our own experience and the fact that there's uniformity. If things stop being uniform, we can't really believe it. We can't believe outside of the uniformity of nature, which seems troubling in a way when you think about, well, there are lots of exceptions to rules. Things aren't always uniform, but I guess they're uniform in those exceptions. So maybe they are actually I guess, uniform in a way. I'll have to think up an example for that and come back to that. Um, where was I up to? I'm so sorry, guys. I lost my spot. There is something wrong somewhere, but the possibility of inference is taken away. We must rest in our experience and not go beyond it at all. If an event really happened which was not a part of the uniformity of nature, it would have two properties. No evidence could give the right to believe it in any except those whose actual experience it was, and in no inference worthy of a belief could be founded upon it at all. We are then bound to believe that nature is absolutely Are we then bound, to believe that nature is absolutely and universally uniform? Yeah, this seems like a problem. And he says, certainly not. We have no right to believe anything of this kind. The rule only tells us that informing beliefs, so I guess he's going over the problem I just said. Certainly not. We have no right to believe anything of this kind. The rule only tells us that in forming beliefs which go beyond our experience, we may make the assumption that nature is practically uniform as far as we are concerned. Within the large range of human action and verification, we may form, by help of this assumption, actual beliefs beyond it, only those hypotheses which serve for the more accurate asking of questions. And it does not mean, so it therefore does not mean we have to believe nature is universally uniform. It is only things that go beyond our experience that we make that assumption. If it's within our experience that they aren't universally uniform, and we've got experience of that, we don't have to believe it. There we go. Fixed my problem that I had in the paragraph above. Well done, Clifford. And then he goes to sum up. We may believe what goes beyond our experience only when it is inferred from that experience by the assumption that we do not know is like what we know. We may believe the statement of another person when there is reasonable ground for supposing that he knows the matter of which he speaks and that he is speaking the truth so far as he knows it. It is wrong in all cases to believe on insufficient evidence, and where it is a presumption to doubt and to investigate, there is worse than there there let me reread this sentence, guys. Sorry. It is wrong in all cases to believe on insufficient evidence, and where it is presumption to doubt and to investigate, there it is worse than presumption to believe. The end. Well done. That was a long read, but I hope that this video has been helpful. You can probably see now we touched on all four of the key questions. So Clifford's going to be one that's definitely good to revise for the exam because you'll be able to use him in lots of different sections of the exam if the sample exam is like the actual exam is like. So there are lots of places for you to connect in those four key questions. So thank you for watching and have an absolutely fantastic day. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.